I'm Travis McCoy. I help lead the product management team for Android Enterprise.
Thank you.
And my counterpart, Andre, of course.
Hi, I'm Andre Popescu. I'm an engineering director working on Android in London, and I lead the Android Enterprise engineering team.
It's good to see so many familiar faces here. I think a lot of you have probably joined us last year when we were in what is now a hole in the ground that is going to be the new Google building that David mentioned. So to those of you who are returning, thanks for coming back with us and spending part of your week to learn about what we're doing in Android. For those of you whom this is your first Android conference, an especially warm welcome. It's a pleasure, and I think it's both exciting for us on the product and engineering teams to have a chance to tell you about what we're up to. It's also quite humbling that you would take the time out of your week to spend some time with us and understanding what we're doing. So again, thanks for that. Hopefully, it'll be an informative and quite interesting couple of days. The session that we're going to do today, we really want to focus first on some of the key initiatives that we have going on across the Android Enterprise program. So today we'll talk about all the things that have been sort of major initiatives that we've been working on in the last year, since last we met. And then, of course, tomorrow we're going to take sort of a futuristic look at where we see things going, whether it's in Managed Play or in the management stack, or, of course, Android P, which we'll learn the name of later today. Incidentally, a side note, if you'd like to watch the I/O keynote, that'll be happening this evening, and they'll be live streaming it. They'll be doing a live stream, I think, in this room, or if it's not up here, then check upstairs. So if you'd like to see what's going on in the rest of Android, we have a few other announcements that are in store later today. So with that, let's talk about sort of the opportunity that we are most excited about. Hopefully, this is why you're all here. And I want to spend a minute explaining where we think Android is going as a platform and how we see this fitting in to the opportunity we have as an ecosystem. There are effectively two primary trends that we see as being especially relevant today as we imagine where Android fits on this long-term journey that a lot of companies are on when it comes to digitizing their businesses. The first is all of this momentum that David talked about that is behind Android as an ecosystem. You have 2 billion worldwide monthly actives. You have 300 million plus odd devices shipping into enterprise every year. And you have thousands and thousands of different handset models, dedicated devices, form factors of every shape and size that make up this large ecosystem. So this is the technology that's coming into play. And on the other side, you have customers who are increasing the rate at which they're digitizing their business. Right? If you look at the rate of change relative to where we were 15 or 20 years ago, at the rate the companies are adopting some of these new technologies, there's sort of an exponential nature to that curve. And the thing that we are most excited about is the fact that these two curves complement each other. And that, as a phenomenon, is really a once or twice in a technological generation kind of event. When people think about Android, typically they think about the traditional knowledge worker use case. Right? So here's an example of what most people think about when they consider the market that's addressable by Android. Gartner estimates this at over $700 billion in annual IT spending for traditional knowledge worker devices, PCs, laptops, mobile devices, peripherals, et cetera. What I would suggest to you is that the effect of these two different trends, however, mean that Android is actually poised at the beginning of a much larger journey, and that what we're seeing are the early days of a transformation that goes much deeper into businesses. Because of that flexibility of the Android platform, it's not just about traditional IT workers. It's about that range of use cases that Dave was talking about that aren't just about handsets and tablets. It's about point-of-sale system. It's about manufacturing devices. It's about all of the additional work that companies are doing to mobilize and digitize their business. This is the market that we think Android is poised to be able to tackle. So this is what we're excited about building a platform to enable, and it's the thing that we want to enable you as our partners to go out and participate in this type of a transformation. So that's the opportunity. Hopefully you're as excited about it as we are. Let me spend some time talking about how we're then thinking about the platform and how we want to evolve it to address that larger opportunity. For one, we think that the world in which companies can expect their employees to carry more than one device for personal mobility is quickly phasing out, right? The modern operating system for mobility has to enable mixed use of personal and work tasks on a single device. So this is what we've been on this journey from Lollipop onward to enable with Android. We also know that the diversity of Android is only really useful if it comes with consistency. So one of our major focuses for the program in the last year is making sure that we can deliver on this story of having a consistent set of management APIs, a consistent app ecosystem, so that when you write an Android app, whether you're going to run it on a handset or a point-of-sale system, it's going to work and you're going to think about it in the same way. That you can have a consistent way of deploying those apps, and that you have a consistent security model that you can reason about in a sane way across device ecosystems. So we'll talk a bit about that. And then last, we are extraordinarily cognizant of the fact that Android is not just partner-led from a go-to-market perspective, it's also partner-led when we think about feature development, which means that we spend a substantial investment in features and making sure that they work seamlessly with the solutions that you're delivering to customers. We have to make sure that this is complementary to the work that you as our partners are doing, so that it's not just about building the whizziest feature, but can we build a seamless experience that you all can take, leverage, and bring to the field. So finally, we'll talk about the work that we're doing in building a complete solution that works well for you, our partners, and how we think about that. Cool. So this notion of having one device, decidedly not new, and it seems simple enough. But in reality, it's a remarkably complex and constrained problem. On the one hand, we have all of these users who expect an increasingly slick, seamless experience on a device where they have decided to welcome the IT admin in on their phone, for which they do all sorts of personal tasks. And on the other hand, we have IT admins who are sort of being asked to make increasingly difficult statements about the security stance of their fleets. They have more and more devices under management, and the cost of getting it wrong is going up every year. So this is really the problem statement that we've been designing Android to help address. What it means is that we've been investing in the platform to give you a range of flexible options for how you deploy Android, depending on the use case. And it's this one device experience that is really the crux of our BYOD solution, which is Android's work profile. So on the left-hand side, work profile, we should talk about how user expectations are evolving. We think that in a world where you think about how users are thinking about their data, how regulators are increasingly considering the role that data privacy needs to play. When you think about what a modern operating system should deliver in BYOD, we increasingly expect that users are going to ask for OS-level assurances that their personal data isn't going to be mixed, mingled, or otherwise observed by IT admins. This is a question that every BYOD employee should be asking about their mobile device before they enroll. Do I have assurances as to what is and is not private? And this is something that we think Android is uniquely equipped to address, because the work profile gives you this OS guarantee of separation and privacy. So you'll see us continuing to double down on the work profile because we think this is really the modern way of doing BYOD. And then on the right-hand side, for company-owned devices, you've got a spectrum of options. If you're deploying a dedicated use device, like a kiosk or point of sales or digital signage, you can lock that device to one or two or more apps. And then, of course, you have a whole range and a spectrum of options all the way up to and including personally enabled corporate-owned devices. Dave hinted at this in his last session, and I want to spend some time on this because it was actually a hero feature in the Oreo release, which we sent out last year, or sorry, I guess last fall it was. So in this case, we want to make sure that we meet what we heard from you, our partners, was being one of the largest unmet needs that the platform wasn't doing well at addressing, which was this COAP model, or personally enabled corporate-owned devices. And what we've done is we've brought the usability benefits of the work profile, of having that expectation of separation, to a management mode where you have full control over the device. So the company still owns the hardware. The user gets the benefit of understanding where it is that they're expected to install Facebook and where they're expected to have a clean corporate container for data. Again, the OS should be enabling this type of flexibility. The other thing that we heard from all of you was that IT admins are being increasingly asked to make statements about the integrity of devices, whether it's in BYOD or a fully managed device. And so we've spent an enormous amount of time thinking about how we can increase the confidence in the security stance of a device when it's under management. Renee is going to talk about this in the next session, but I want to highlight a couple of things that we've done that we think are particularly exciting. For one, Android is very much moving to a world in which more and more sensitive operations are hardware-backed in a trusted hardware module that can be separated from the main processor on the device. Many of you are familiar with this, talking about it as a TE or as a secure element. So in Android Oreo, now it's possible for things like verified boot or the lock screen to be based in a hardware root of trust. Now, to bypass the lock screen or to brute force it requires hardware-level compromise, so it's no longer sufficient to just have straightforward malware on the device. We've also hardened things like rollback protection, so it's no longer possible without a hardware bypass to roll back a device to a previous version of the OS that might be vulnerable to a known attack. It's also worth noting that it's now possible to validate the integrity of a device remotely. In Oreo, we added APIs that let you cryptographically assert that the device has passed all verified boot checks, and you can in fact assert that any key hidden in the key or stored in the key store hasn't been tampered with or otherwise compromised. This is particularly interesting if you're trying to make decisions about whether or not to trust a network when it trust the device when it joins a network or is otherwise trying to access sensitive data. Now you can do that remotely, and you have a cryptographic root of trust to base that decision on. Last thing I'll mention is that all of you and our customers continue to tell us that provisioning is a particularly important part of the device lifecycle, and so you'll continue to see us investing in making that ever better. For BYOD devices, we know that every step that we add to the provisioning process, every minute that we add, decreases the success rates of those deployments and drives up costs because users get lost or devices time out. For BYOD now in Android Oreo, we've sped up the process of provisioning a work profile, so it's now 10 times faster than what you would have seen in Nougat, which means that you can basically provision a work profile and get it up and running with apps being installed within a couple of seconds on devices that are running Oreo. And then, of course, for company-owned devices, Zero Touch is a huge investment. And Dave talked about this and the partner momentum we're seeing here. I want to emphasize a couple of parts of how this works exactly. So if you're familiar with iOS, you can think of this as quite analogous to Apple's DEP program. The experience that you get as an IT admin is that you can buy a set of devices from an OEM or from a reseller and then ship those devices directly to the end user. And you as the IT admin can assign those devices to your corporate account so that when the device comes online, it knows that it's under management, it knows the policies it needs to pull down, and we can provide the user with a really slick, easy onboarding process to get up and running. The other thing that you know is that the hardware is now locked to the company's account. So even across factory reset, you have complete lifecycle management of the hardware. It's locked to your corporate account, which means that the hardware isn't going to be disappearing. You don't have to worry about device security from a lifecycle management perspective. We think that this experience is also a foundation of the modern enterprise OS. And so if you're not already talking to us about integrating Zero Touch, if you're an OEM or a reseller or an EMM, you should be. Please come and talk to someone on my team, on Dave's team, or reach out to your friendly local account manager, because you'll see us making a lot of news and pushing this heavily as the modern way to do device deployments from Android Oreo and forward. It's worth noting that this is, of course, part of a larger story in how we're investing in making sure that provisioning is flexible, it's easy, and it fits that range of devices that we see using Android. So regardless of whether your device has a camera or has NFC or it has a keyboard, or if you just want to make this a touchless deployment, we have those range of options that we've been building in the last several releases of Android, and you'll see us continuing to invest there. So we talked about how we want to enable Android to be flexible and how we want to make sure that it addresses these range of use cases so that whatever the device is that you have in your hand, it's capable of doing work and personal tasks at once. Let's talk about how we're making sure that the platform extends across device types. Again, it's not Android's diversity that is inherently powerful. It's the fact that we can add consistency on top of that diversity that is our story to customers. It's the fact that you have unified management APIs, a unified app ecosystem, a unified security model, all of which you can reason about in a consistent way regardless of the fleet that you're thinking about or the device type that you're managing. We've been working with a lot of you to go ahead and make sure that this story applies across device types and across device ecosystems. And so to the extent that you've been involved with this in those conversations in the last year, thank you. I want to call out a couple of highlights from the last year just to make sure everyone is aware of some of the latest things that we've been doing here. On the knowledge worker side of things, Samsung has been obviously one of the early innovators in the enterprise space. Frankly, they've been thinking about enterprise since before we have been. And as these two programs become sort of increasingly popular, we get a lot of questions from customers asking things like, So when should I use Knox and when should I use the Android platform? And how do these things work together? And what does it mean to do both? We and Samsung wanted to make sure that this story became increasingly clear as we evolve both programs. And so we've been partnering quite closely with them over a number of years to simplify this story. What the result of that has been is something that we're quite excited about, and that is that Samsung Knox is now based on the standardized Android platform APIs. So starting in Oreo and Knox 3.0, you now have the best of both worlds if you're a customer deploying a Samsung device. You get the consistency of the Android platform APIs, which means that you can manage it just like any other device in your fleet. But you also can add on top of that the enhanced capabilities of Knox. So you still get the differentiation and the advanced capabilities that Samsung has built into their devices in particular. What we hope is that this simplifies the message to customers, that it simplifies your lives for us, for yourselves as partners when you're trying to tell this consistent story. And we're quite excited about continuing to work with Samsung on bringing these two stories closer and closer together. If you have questions about this, again, please grab us or talk to our Samsung colleagues about it, because it's really one of the most strategic partnerships we've had with them, and we're quite excited about launching it with Oreo. Last thing I want to point out is the momentum that we're seeing specifically as this one platform story progresses into the dedicated use device space. We have seen a number of large-scale, multi-thousand device deployments happening over the last several months. And the thing that's notable about this is how widely it's ranging across geographies, across device types, and even across industries. So folks like Marks & Spencer in the UK in retail, or whether it's Pitney Bowes doing digital commerce and shipping, whether it's Australia Post, who just started a 1,000 device pilot with shipping and logistics. They're rolling out more than 40,000 devices this year. This is the type of momentum that we really want to be seeing and enabling from a platform perspective, and we're quite excited about the fact that we've been working so closely with you as our partners to make those successful. That's also the reason why we've decided to make this a core pillar of Android P. So when we talk about P tomorrow, you'll see that this is one of the major focuses. We want to make sure that experiences that are core to dedicated device use cases, like kiosks, shared devices, shift worker use cases, are all native concepts in the platform. And so we'll be telling you more tomorrow about how we're working on enabling that and how you as partners can leverage some of the work that we've done.
Cool. Thank you, Travis.
Cheers.
So having been involved in Android Enterprise since the very beginning, for four and a half years or so, first of all, I wanted to just pause and thank all of you for being here. It's really exciting to me, and as well as humbling, to see all this interest and all of you being here with us and part of this amazing partnership throughout all of the years. I mean, I have to thank you for the amazing work that you've done. The 10x growth that David talked about earlier wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for you. And this is really important because the entire approach that we take with Android Enterprise is partner first. And I'm going to try to prove that by drawing a parallel with the Android ecosystem as a whole. So of course, Android is a Linux-based open source operating system. And our entire goal there is to maximize the adoption of this software and to enable a partnership where carriers, OEMs, and for instance, application developers can really take their innovation and turn it into real-world products based on Android. Anyone can just take the Android open source software, modify it, deploy it, and then just create real-world products that really improve the experience of mobile users everywhere. And it's the same with Android Enterprise. We wanted to take an approach where we built a platform and not a product. And the goal is to enable and foster a successful ecosystem in enterprise, where enterprise mobility management companies, carriers, developers, system integrators, resellers, everyone really can work together and create solutions for the benefit of the enterprise customers. So the key there is that Android Enterprise is a platform and not a product, as I said. And what it really does is to take care of core concepts, such as the separation between work data and personal data, all the way to distributing applications at scale, leaving our partners to focus on their core business. And then, of course, like Android as a whole, Android Enterprise is a free platform. Today, I want, though, to go a little bit beyond Android operating system itself and sort of talk about those initiatives that touch other parts of Google, cloud, security, and so forth. So I mentioned distributing applications at scale. Well, mobile devices are not very useful without applications. So the challenge that we faced here was to provide IT admins with really easy and intuitive ways to find, deploy, and configure business applications. How did we do this? Well, we did it in a form of a platform, managed Google Play. And EMM companies can integrate this very simple iframe into the EMM consoles, allowing IT administrators to find and whitelist paid as well as free apps, or to even publish their own private apps and then have them hosted either on Google Play or on their own infrastructure on their own premises. The other thing that Managed Play really does very well is to allow IT admins to push install applications directly with a click of a button, or to curate their own company store. And that will allow employees to go and install whitelisted applications directly from the Google Play Store on their device. So again, the key here is that we created a platform that allows any EMM to offer to the enterprise customers access to the largest and the most sophisticated application distribution platform in the world. Google Play Protect, we introduced this, I think, about a year ago at Google I/O in 2017. And that is Google's built-in malware protection for Android. Scanning over 50 billion applications every single day, our machine learning algorithms are constantly on the lookout for risks or for any application that may sort of cross the line in some way. And they are warning the user or even are capable of removing these potentially harmful applications off the device completely. It's fair to say that every single application that gets published on Google Play goes through a very serious and rigorous security scanning process. But at the same time, Google Play Protect can also warn you about applications that are downloaded and installed from other sources than Google Play. So really, Google Play Protect, you can think of it as a tool that keeps you as well as your Android users safe. And starting with Oreo, we introduced a feature that allows EMMs to offer to the IT admins the possibility to ensure that Google Play Protect is always running on devices that are registered on the company network, giving everyone peace of mind that the corporate network is free of potentially harmful apps. This is just a teaser of what we do in security in general. So after me, René will be doing a deep dive on all the security work done by the Android security team. Another part of our platform is the support that we give for one of the most common productivity use cases in enterprise, and that's email. We really want to save our partners time by building support for Microsoft Exchange directly into Gmail. We recognize that enterprise customers want support for email directly out of the box. And Gmail, of course, is bundled with every single Android GMS device. So having this capability into Gmail is key to offer our customers this out-of-the-box experience. And of course, using mobile configuration management, IT admins can remotely configure Gmail such that end users and employees don't have to manually configure Gmail, or in some cases, don't even have to manually authenticate. We also recognize that for a lot of partners and a lot of customers, managing large fleets of devices is actually hard. Currently, enterprise mobility management companies have to write fairly sophisticated device policy controller apps where they do fairly sophisticated and complex things like provisioning, enrollment, as well as deploying a corporate policy on the device. Well, in October 2017, we announced and launched the Android Management API, which is a server-side API that is meant to save partners the effort in building these complex client-side applications. It is effectively a Google Cloud API, a server-side API, that an EMM can directly talk to do pretty much the same things, enrollment, as well as applying a corporate policy. What is interesting about it, of course, as I said earlier, is that it allows you to sort of avoid all the complexity of worrying about the Android framework and about Android client-side APIs, and focus on what really matters to the customer. We feel like the actual value is in the console because that's where the company policy is being defined, that's where the company policy is being sort of sent to all the devices, and not in the actual details of what happens on the device. So there are like 3 major advantages of using this API. First of all, as I said, it alleviates the need to create a client application. The second is that it's always up to date. Because, of course, it's being built by the same engineering team that creates all of the Android OS features. We keep it in sync, and every time we make an Android dessert release, we update the API as well, such that when the new Android release is out, the API always has support for the latest features. Then finally, of course, if you're worried about managing large fleets of devices, you'll probably be worried about increased infrastructure costs associated from that. Being powered by the Google Cloud, this API alleviates at least some of those worries. Of course, we recognize that it's probably going to be hard at the very beginning to talk directly from your premises to a Google Cloud API. We fully acknowledge that, but we truly believe that down the line, on the longer term, this will pay off massively in terms of reduced complexity on the client side. So the one key message I have for all of you today is that we have built a platform, and the whole purpose of that platform is to enable you, our partners, to create truly exciting and truly amazing products for our end customers. We really want to foster that ecosystem, and much of what we do is for you, the partners. And with that, I'd like to pass it on to René, who is going to talk in detail about the security measures that we do in Android. Thank you.